The alarm clock screamed at 5:30 a.m., and Maya's hand shot out to silence it before it could wake her mother in the next room. She sat up in the darkness, her body protesting every movement. 3 hours of sleep. That's all she'd managed after her mother's medication schedule had kept her up until 2 a.m. Maya was 28 years old, but some mornings she felt twice that age. She worked as a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital on the south side of Chicago, pulling double shifts whenever she could. The money wasn't great, but it was steady, and right now steady was all that mattered. She stumbled to the bathroom and splashed cold water on her face. The woman staring back at her in the mirror looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy bun, the same tired expression she'd been wearing for months. When had she last gone out with friends? When had she last done something just for herself? She couldn't remember. In the kitchen, she made coffee and checked her phone. Her younger brother had texted her at midnight asking if she could spot him $200 for textbooks. She closed her eyes and did the math in her head. After rent, her mother's medications, utilities, and the minimum payment on her credit card, she had maybe $300 left until next payday. She typed back a quick message saying she'd transfer the money by tomorrow. Her mother's medical bills sat in a stack on the counter. Maya had stopped opening them weeks ago. What was the point? She knew what they said. The cancer treatment had cost more than she could ever hope to pay back, even with the hospital's payment plan. Some nights she lay awake doing calculations, trying to figure out how she'd ever climb out of this hole. But then she'd think about her mother's smile when the doctor said the cancer was responding to treatment. She'd think about her brother's excitement when he got accepted to college, the first person in their family to go. And she'd remind herself that money was just money. You couldn't put a price on the people you loved. Maya grabbed her bag and headed out the door. It was Tuesday, and she had the morning shift starting at 7. The bus would take too long, and she'd already been written up twice this month for being late. She decided to cut through Grant Park to catch the L train. It would save her maybe 10 minutes if she walked fast. The morning air was crisp and cool. Fall in Chicago had always been her favorite time of year, back when she had time to enjoy things like seasons. Now she barely noticed whether it was hot or cold. She was always moving, always rushing from one responsibility to the next. She checked her phone as she walked. 6:15. If she caught the 6:25 train, she'd make it to the hospital by 6:50. Just enough time to clock in and grab a cup of terrible break room coffee before her shift started. That's when she saw him. An older man, maybe in his late 60s, was sitting on a park bench about 50 feet ahead. Well, not exactly sitting. He was sort of slumped over, one hand clutching his chest, the other gripping the bench like he was trying to hold himself up. Maya's nursing instincts kicked in before her brain fully registered what she was seeing. She'd seen that posture before. The way he was breathing, short and labored, the pale, sweaty complexion even from a distance, the way his whole body seemed to be fighting against itself. She broke into a run. As she got closer, she could see he was well dressed. Expensive suit, nice watch, shoes that probably cost more than her monthly rent. But none of that mattered right now. What mattered was that this man was in serious trouble. Sir? Sir, can you hear me? She dropped her bag and knelt beside him. His eyes were open but unfocused. He tried to speak but only managed a weak grunt. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool morning air. Maya's training took over completely now. She checked his pulse, racing and irregular. His breathing was shallow. His skin was cold and clammy. Every sign pointed to the same thing. He was having a heart attack. Someone call 911. She shouted to the handful of people passing by. A jogger with headphones didn't even slow down. A woman walking her dog glanced over but kept moving. A man in a business suit looked irritated by the disruption to his morning routine. Please, this man needs help.
Call 911.
Maya's voice was desperate now. Finally, a young guy on a bike pulled over and yanked out his phone. The man on the bench made a choking sound and started to slump forward. Maya caught him and carefully lowered him to the ground. His eyes rolled back and she couldn't find a pulse anymore. This was it. The moment every nurse trained for but hoped would never come when they were alone. She positioned her hands on his chest and started compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4. She counted in her head, keeping the rhythm steady. 30 compressions, then 2 rescue breaths. Then back to compressions. Her arms started to burn. Effective CPR is exhausting. Something they don't really prepare you for in training. You're pushing hard enough to compress the chest 2 inches with every thrust. You're essentially doing the heart's job for it, manually pumping blood through the body. 1, 2, 3, 4. Keep going. Don't stop. She could hear sirens in the distance. How long had it been? 2 minutes, 3? Time moves strangely when you are trying to keep someone alive. 30 compressions. 2 breaths. 30 compressions. 2 breaths. Her shoulders screamed in protest. Sweat dripped down her face. She wanted to stop, wanted to rest for just a second, but she knew that wasn't an option. Every second without circulation meant brain cells dying. Every compression might be the one that kept him alive long enough for the paramedics to arrive. A small crowd had gathered now, watching but not helping. That was the thing about emergencies. Everyone wanted to watch, but nobody wanted to be responsible. Come on, Maya muttered between compressions. Come on, stay with me. The sirens got louder. The paramedics were close now, 30 compressions. 2 breaths. Her arms felt like they might give out. And then she felt it. A flutter under her hands, a cough. The man's chest rose on its own, just slightly. He was breathing again. The paramedics rushed over with their equipment. Maya sat back on her heels, gasping for air, her whole body shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion. How long were you doing CPR? One of the paramedics asked as they worked. 7, maybe 8 minutes, Maya said, her voice hoarse. You saved his life, the paramedic said simply. Another minute and we would have been too late. They loaded the man onto a stretcher. As they carried him toward the ambulance, one of his eyes cracked open. He looked directly at Maya, and for just a second there was recognition there. A connection. A silent thank you. Then they were gone, sirens wailing as they disappeared down the street. Maya sat on the ground for a moment, trying to catch her breath. Then she looked at her phone. 6:47 a.m. She was going to be so late. She grabbed her bag and started running toward the train station. Her supervisor was going to kill her. This was her 3rd time being late this month, and she'd been warned that one more incident could mean her job. As she ran, she didn't think about the man she'd just saved. She didn't wonder who he was or whether he'd make it. She'd done this before. Not the CPR in the park part, but saving lives. It was her job. It was what she did every single day at the hospital. In Maya's mind, she hadn't done anything special. She'd just done what anyone should do when they see someone in trouble. She had no idea that those 7 minutes would change her entire life. Maya got written up that day. Her supervisor, Mrs. Patterson, didn't want to hear about the man in the park or the CPR or any of it. She just saw another late arrival, another broken rule. Maya took the disciplinary notice without arguing. What was the point? She needed this job too badly to make waves. The next 3 days blurred together like they always did. 12-hour shifts checking vitals, administering medications, holding the hands of scared patients, explaining procedures to worried families. She barely had time to think about the man she'd saved in the park. By Thursday, it felt like something that had happened months ago instead of days. Her mother was having a good week, which meant Maya could actually sleep more than 4 hours a night. Her brother had stopped asking for money, which probably meant he was eating ramen for every meal but didn't want to worry her. And Maya's bank account was sitting at $247 until payday, which was exactly as depressing as it sounded. Friday night she was working the overnight shift, the one nobody wanted. The hospital was quieter at night, which should have been a relief, but somehow the silence made everything feel heavier. Maya was at the nurse's station doing paperwork when she heard footsteps approaching. She looked up and saw a man in a suit that probably cost more than her car. He was Asian, maybe in his 40s, with perfect posture and an expression that gave nothing away. The kind of person who made you sit up straighter just by being in the room. "Excuse me," he said politely. "I'm looking for Maya Rodriguez." Maya's stomach dropped. Had something happened to her mother? Her brother? Why else would someone like this be looking for her at work? "That's me," she said, her voice coming out smaller than she intended. The man smiled and his whole face changed. He suddenly looked warm, human. "Ms. Rodriguez, my name is Robert Chen. I'm the chief of staff for someone named James Whitmore." The name meant absolutely nothing to Maya. She stared at him blankly. "James Whitmore," Robert repeated, as if saying it again would make it click. "The founder of Whitmore Technologies?" Still nothing. Maya didn't follow tech news or business stuff. She barely had time to check social media. Robert's smile widened like he found this refreshing. "Mr. Whitmore is the man you saved in Grant Park on Tuesday morning." Maya's breath caught. Oh, is he okay? Did he make it? He made it because of you, Robert said. The doctor said if you hadn't performed CPR when you did, he wouldn't have survived. You gave him 7 minutes, Ms. Rodriguez. 7 minutes that saved his life. Maya felt her face get hot. I was just doing what anyone would do. I'm a nurse. It's my job. Most people walked right past him that morning, Robert said quietly. You were the only one who stopped. Mr. Whitmore has been asking about you since he woke up in the hospital. He wanted to thank you personally, but you disappeared before anyone could get your information. It took us 3 days to track you down through park surveillance cameras and hospital employment records. Maya didn't know what to say. She'd saved people before. It was part of being a nurse. Nobody ever tracked her down afterward. Robert reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Mr. Whitmore wanted me to give you this. He's currently recovering at a private cardiac facility, but he very much hopes you'll come visit him when you have time. He handed her the envelope and gave a small nod, almost like a bow. Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. You gave a dying man his life back. That's not something we take lightly. Then he was gone, his footsteps echoing down the quiet hallway. Maya stood there holding the envelope, her heart pounding. Her coworker Brenda came around the corner carrying a stack of patient charts. Who was that? Brenda asked, eyes wide.
He looked like he stepped out of a magazine. I don't know, Maya said honestly.
Some guy looking for me. She waited until Brenda was gone before opening the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note on thick, expensive paper. The handwriting was shaky, like whoever wrote it was still weak. Dear Ms. Rodriguez, it read. I don't have adequate words to thank you for what you did. You saved my life without hesitation, without knowing who I was, without expecting anything in return, in a world that often feels cold and disconnected. Your compassion reminded me that goodness still exists. Please accept this small token of my gratitude. And please consider visiting me so I can thank you properly. With deepest appreciation, James Whitmore. Maya's hands started shaking before she even saw what else was in the envelope. When she pulled out the check, she actually gasped out loud. $50,000. She read the number 3 times to make sure she wasn't seeing things. $50,000. Made out to her. Signed by James Whitmore in that same shaky handwriting. Maya sat down hard in her chair. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. People didn't just hand out $50,000. This was more money than she made in an entire year of working double shifts and overtime. She could pay off her mother's medical bills. All of them. She could help her brother with school without him having to eat ramen and work 3 jobs. She could fix her car that made weird sounds every time she went over 40 miles per hour. She could maybe, just maybe, breathe for the first time in months. But something felt wrong about it. She'd saved his life because it was the right thing to do, not because she wanted a reward. Taking this money felt like she'd done it for payment, like she was some kind of hero for hire. Her mother had raised her better than that. You help people because they need help, not because you might get something out of it. Maya stared at the check for so long that Brenda came back and asked if she was okay. I'm fine, Maya lied, shoving the check back in the envelope. Just tired. She couldn't sleep when she got home that morning. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the envelope sitting on her nightstand like it was radioactive. $50,000. It would change everything. But would it change who she was? Her mother knocked softly and peeked in. Mija, you okay? You look worried. Maya almost told her everything right then. But what would she say? That she had $50,000 but didn't know if she should keep it? Her mother would tell her to take it, to stop being proud and accept help when it was offered. But her mother also raised her to stand on her own 2 feet. I'm fine, Mama, just a long shift. Over the next week, Maya couldn't stop thinking about the check. She looked up James Whitmore online and felt her stomach drop. He wasn't just rich. He was billionaire rich. His company made software that half the world used. His net worth was somewhere in the billions with a B. $50,000 was probably nothing to him. Like her giving someone a $5 bill. But to her it was everything. She read articles about him. Started his company in a garage 30 years ago. Built it into an empire. Lost his wife to cancer 2 years ago. Had kids who were always in the tabloids for the wrong reasons. Despite all his money, the articles made him sound kind of lonely. The note said he wanted her to visit. Maya read it over and over, trying to decide what to do. Part of her wanted to just deposit the check and move on with her life. But another part, the part that made her stop in the park in the first place, told her that wasn't right. If she was going to take his money, the least she could do was look him in the eye and say thank you. 2 weeks after Robert's visit, Maya found herself standing outside a luxury high-rise in downtown Chicago. The doorman looked at her like she'd wandered into the wrong building in her jeans and old jacket. She gave James's name, and the doorman's attitude changed immediately. "Of course, Ms. Rodriguez, Mr. Whitmore is expecting you. Top floor." The elevator was nicer than her entire apartment. It moved so smoothly she barely felt it rising. When the doors opened, she stepped into a penthouse that took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the entire city spread out below. Artwork that looked like it belonged in museums hung on the walls. Everything was white and clean and expensive. She was suddenly very aware of her worn sneakers and the coffee stain on her jacket. "Ms. Rodriguez?" She turned and saw him. The man from the park. He looked better, healthier, but she recognized those eyes. They were the same eyes that had looked at her with silent gratitude as the paramedics loaded him into the ambulance. James Whitmore stood up from a white leather chair, moving carefully like his body was still healing. He smiled at her, and it was genuine, warm, the smile of someone who knew what it meant to be given a second chance. "Thank you for coming," he said simply. "I wasn't sure you would." Maya clutched her purse where she'd put the check. She'd planned a whole speech about gratitude and refusing the money. But standing there looking at this man who had almost died on a park bench, all her prepared words disappeared. "I couldn't cash your check without saying thank you first," she finally said. "It's too much." James laughed, a real laugh that filled the huge space. "Ms. Rodriguez, you gave me my life back. $50,000 is too much. I'd have given you $50 million if I thought you'd accept it." And somehow Maya found herself laughing too. They talked for 3 hours that first day. Maya kept thinking she should leave, that she was taking up too much of his time, but James kept asking questions. Not the surface-level stuff people usually asked, real questions. He wanted to know about nursing, about what made her choose that path. She told him about watching her grandmother get sick when she was 12, about feeling helpless, about deciding right then that she wanted to be the person who helped instead of the person who just watched. James told her about starting his company in a garage with 2 friends and $700. About eating nothing but dollar store noodles for 2 years. About the night he almost gave up when his bank account hit zero and he didn't know how he'd make rent. "What stopped you?" Maya asked. "Stubbornness, mostly," he said with a smile. "And fear. I was more afraid of wondering what if than I was of failing." He asked about her mother, and Maya found herself telling him everything. The cancer diagnosis, the treatments, the bills that kept coming even when they'd set up a payment plan, the way her mother apologized every single day for being a burden, even though she was the strongest person Maya knew. "My wife had cancer," James said quietly. 2 years ago. We had the best doctors, the best hospitals, every treatment money could buy, and none of it mattered. She died anyway." His voice broke a little on that last part. Here was a man worth billions of dollars, and money couldn't save the person he loved most. Maya understood then why $50,000 meant nothing to him. When you couldn't buy what really mattered, what was the point of any of it? "I'm sorry," Maya said, and meant it. "She would have liked you," James said. Helen had this thing about kindness. She said, "You could always tell a person's real character by how they treated people they didn't have to be nice to. Service workers, nurses, janitors, the invisible people that keep the world running." Maya felt her throat get tight. She'd spent years being invisible. The nurse people barely looked at when they demanded pain medication. The person taking their blood pressure while they scrolled through their phones. She'd made peace with it, told herself it didn't matter. But it did matter. It always had. Before she left that day, James walked her to the door. He moved slowly, still recovering, but insisted on seeing her out properly. "I meant what I said in my note," he told her. "The check is just a small token. I'd like to do more, if you'll let me." Maya shook her head. "Mr. Whitmore, you've already done too much." "James," he corrected, "and I haven't done anything yet. But I'd like to. Would you come back? Talk with me again?" Something in his voice made her look up. He wasn't just being polite. He was lonely. This man who could buy anything, who probably had assistants and staff everywhere, was lonely in his perfect white penthouse with his $1,000,000 view. "Okay," she heard herself say. "I'll come back," and she did, 3 days later. Then again the following week. Each time they talked, Maya learned something new. James wasn't what she expected. He didn't act like the rich people she'd seen on TV. He was funny, self-deprecating, genuinely interested in her life. He told her about his children. A son and daughter, both in their 30s, both angry at him for reasons he didn't fully understand. They called on birthdays and Christmas, asked about his health, but there was no warmth in it. They were waiting for him to die so they could inherit his money. The heart attack had made that painfully clear when neither of them bothered to visit him in the hospital. "That's horrible," Maya said. "That's life," James replied with a shrug. "I was a bad father. Worked too much. Missed too many games and recitals. Thought providing for them was the same as being present. By the time I figured out my mistake, they were already grown up and angry." During her fourth visit, James made his offer. They were sitting in his living room drinking coffee when he brought it up. Casual, like he was suggesting they order takeout. "I want to set up a trust fund for your mother's medical care," he said. "Complete coverage. Whatever she needs for as long as she needs it." Maya's coffee cup froze halfway to her mouth. "James, no. That's too much. Your brother," he continued like she hadn't spoken. "What's his name again?" "Carlos," Maya said automatically. "Carlos. I want to cover his education, full ride. Tuition, books, housing, everything. He shouldn't have to work 3 jobs and eat ramen to get his degree. You can't just—" "And you," James said, leaning forward. "I have a proposition for you." Maya set down her coffee before she spilled it. Her hands were shaking. "I'm starting a foundation," James said. The Second Chance Foundation. Focused on healthcare access in underserved communities. Training programs for nurses and medical staff. Free clinics, scholarships, all the things that matter but don't make the news. He pulled out a folder and handed it to her. Inside were plans, budgets, mission statements. He'd clearly been working on this for weeks. "I need someone to run it," he said. "Someone who understands healthcare from the inside. Someone who knows what it's like to choose between paying rent and buying groceries. Someone who stops to help strangers in parks." Maya stared at him. "You want me to run your foundation?" "I want you to build it with me," James corrected. "You'd be the director of community health initiatives. Salary would be $200,000 a year to start. Full benefits. Budget to hire a team. Real power to make real changes. $200,000. Maya made $48,000 as a nurse. She did the math in her head and felt dizzy. "I don't have an MBA," she said weakly. "I don't know anything about running a foundation or managing budgets or—" "You have something better," James interrupted. "You have a heart. You have experience. You've lived the problems we're trying to solve. Every nonprofit I've ever funded is run by people with fancy degrees who've never struggled a day in their lives. They mean well, but they don't understand. You understand?" Maya looked down at the folder in her lap. This wasn't real. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. She was a nurse from the South Side who barely graduated college because she was working 40 hours a week to afford it. She wasn't qualified to run a multi-million-dollar foundation. "I need time to think," she whispered. "Of course," James said gently. "Take all the time you need." But as Maya rode the bus home that evening, she couldn't stop thinking about it. $200,000 a year. Her mother taken care of. Carlos able to focus on school. A chance to help hundreds, maybe thousands of people instead of just one patient at a time. It was too good to be true. It had to be. She talked to her mother that night, laying out everything James had offered. Her mother listened quietly, then asked a single question. "Do you trust him?" Maya thought about James sitting alone in his enormous penthouse. About the way he talked about his late wife. About the genuine interest in his eyes when he asked about her day. About the fact that he could have just sent her the check and forgotten about her. But instead he'd invited her into his life. "Yeah," Maya said. "I do. Then what are you afraid of?" That was the question, wasn't it? Maya was afraid of failing. Afraid of being exposed as a fraud. Afraid of leaving nursing, the one thing she knew she was good at. Afraid of people thinking she'd used James, manipulated him somehow. Afraid of change, but she was also tired. Tired of struggling. Tired of choosing between her mother's medication and groceries. Tired of watching her brother work himself to exhaustion. Tired of feeling like she was drowning while everyone else had life jackets. She visited James 3 more times over the next 2 weeks. Each time they talked through her fears. He never pushed, never made her feel stupid for hesitating. He just listened and answered her questions honestly. On her 7th visit, Maya brought the check with her. The one for $50,000 that she still hadn't cashed. She put it on the table between them. I want to cash this, she said, and I want to accept your offer, but I need you to understand something first. James nodded, waiting. I'm not doing this because you're rich or because you're offering me money, Maya said, her voice stronger than she felt. I'm doing this because I believe in what you're trying to build, because I think we can actually help people. But if this is some kind of charity case, if you're doing this because you feel guilty or obligated, then I can't accept. James smiled, that genuine warm smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Maya, I'm not offering you this opportunity because I feel obligated. I'm offering it because that morning in the park, you reminded me what kind of person I want to be. You stopped when everyone else walked past. You gave everything you had to save a stranger. That's not common. That's rare, and if I can give someone like you the resources to change lives on a bigger scale, then maybe my second chance means something. He stood up and held out his hand. So what do you say? Want to change the world with me? Maya stood up too. Her hand was shaking when she reached out to shake his, but her voice was steady when she answered. Yes. Let's do it. Neither of them knew it then, but that handshake would transform hundreds of lives, starting with Maya's own. 6 months changed everything. Maya stood in front of the mirror in her new apartment, barely recognizing herself. Designer suit that actually fit, hair professionally styled, makeup done by someone who knew what they were doing. She looked like the women she used to see in magazines, the ones who seemed to have their lives completely together. But she didn't feel like them. She felt like an imposter playing dress-up. The Second Chance Foundation had launched 3 months ago with a press conference that made Maya want to throw up. Cameras everywhere, reporters asking questions, James introducing her as the director of community health initiatives. Her face ended up in newspapers and on websites. People she hadn't talked to in years suddenly wanted to have coffee. The foundation was doing well. Better than well, actually. They'd given out 50 scholarships to nursing students from low-income families, opened 2 free clinics in neighborhoods that desperately needed them, started a training program for community health workers. Every day, Maya saw the difference they were making. Her mother was living in a beautiful apartment now with a full-time nurse. The cancer was in remission, and for the first time in years, her mother wasn't apologizing for existing. She was smiling again, actually living instead of just surviving. Carlos had quit all 3 of his jobs and was thriving at school. His grades had gone from barely passing to dean's list. He called Maya every week, excited about his classes, talking about maybe going to medical school. The stress had melted off him like he'd been carrying a 1,000-pound weight and someone finally lifted it. Maya should have been happy. She was happy. But she was also exhausted in a completely different way than when she'd been a nurse. Back then, she was physically tired from 12-hour shifts and emotionally drained from watching people suffer. Now she was tired from board meetings and donor dinners and constantly feeling like everyone was waiting for her to mess up. Her old coworkers at the hospital had stopped returning her calls. When she ran into Brenda at the grocery store, the conversation was awkward and cold. Brenda made a comment about how nice it must be to have a cushy office job, not like us real nurses who actually have to work. The words stung more than Maya wanted to admit. People from her old neighborhood looked at her differently too. She'd moved her mother to a safer area with better healthcare access. But the whispers started immediately. Too good for us now. Forgot where she came from. Sleeping her way to the top. That last one hurt the most because it was disgusting and completely untrue. James was like a father to her. Maybe the father she'd never had. He mentored her, believed in her, pushed her to be better. But people saw a young woman and an older wealthy man and made up their own stories. The worst part was the foundation board. James had assembled a group of successful executives and philanthropists to oversee the foundation's work. Most of them were fine, supportive even. But a few clearly thought Maya was a mistake. Richard, a retired hospital administrator, questioned every decision she made. Why are we funding community health workers instead of doctors? Why are we opening clinics in those neighborhoods? Wouldn't our money be better spent on research? He never said it outright, but Maya could read between the lines. He thought she was unqualified. Too young. Too inexperienced. Just some nurse James felt sorry for. At a board meeting in her 5th month, things came to a head. Maya was presenting a proposal to open 3 more clinics and expand their scholarship program. She'd spent weeks on the proposal, working with actual community members to identify the biggest needs. Richard interrupted her halfway through. With all due respect, Ms. Rodriguez, I'm not sure you understand the financial implications of what you're proposing. This would require a significant increase in our annual budget. I understand the numbers, Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. I worked with our finance team on every projection, but do you understand the optics? Richard pressed. We're a new foundation. We need to be conservative, strategic, not just throwing money at every problem. These aren't just problems, Maya said, feeling her face get hot. These are people. Real people who can't afford to see a doctor. Who are dying from preventable diseases because they don't have access to basic health care. I understand that, Richard said in a tone that made it clear he didn't. But we need someone with real experience making these decisions. No offense, but 6 months ago you were a floor nurse. This is a multi-million-dollar operation. The room went silent. Maya felt every eye on her. She wanted to argue, to defend herself, but suddenly she couldn't breathe. The walls felt like they were closing in. All her fears, all her doubts, everything she'd been pushing down for months came crashing up at once. "Excuse me," she managed to say, then walked out of the conference room as calmly as she could. She made it to the building's rooftop terrace before the tears came. Big, ugly, gasping sobs that she couldn't control. Richard was right. She was a floor nurse. She had no business running a foundation. What had she been thinking? She heard footsteps behind her and tried to wipe her face, but it was useless. Maya. It was James. Of course it was James. "I'm sorry," she said, not looking at him. "I shouldn't have walked out. That was unprofessional." "Richard shouldn't have spoken to you like that," James said quietly. "And I told him so after you left." "He's right, though," Maya said, finally turning to face him. "I'm not qualified for this. I don't have an MBA. I've never managed anything bigger than a nursing shift. I'm a fraud and everyone knows it." James was quiet for a moment. Then he walked over to the railing and looked out at the city. "I ever tell you about the waitress?" he asked. Maya shook her head, confused by the change in subject. 30 years ago I was broke," James said. "My first company was failing. I'd maxed out my credit cards, borrowed money from everyone I knew. I was spending 16 hours a day in this diner because they had free Wi-Fi and I couldn't afford internet at my apartment." He smiled at the memory. "There was this waitress there. Linda, I think her name was. She saw me nursing the same cup of coffee for hours, and she started bringing me free meals. Pancakes, sandwiches, whatever they had extra of. Never made a big deal about it, just set the plate down and walked away. That was kind of her," Maya said quietly. "That kindness kept me alive," James said. "Literally. I was so broke I was skipping meals. Too proud to ask my family for help. Too stubborn to quit. If Linda hadn't fed me, I don't know if I would have made it through those months." He turned to look at Maya. "When my company finally took off, I went back to thank her. The diner was closed. I tried to find her. Spent thousands of dollars hiring investigators. Never found her. But I never forgot what she did." "I don't understand," Maya said. "What does this have to do with—" "You think you're here because you saved my life that one day," James interrupted. "But I gave you this opportunity because of who you are every day. Do you know what your team says about you? They say you remember everyone's names. You ask about their families. You stay late to help them with projects. You fight for every dollar to go toward actually helping people instead of fancy offices and expensive conferences." He stepped closer. "The world is full of people like Richard. People with degrees and credentials who know how to run organizations but have forgotten why they're running them. We don't need another administrator. We need someone who sees people, not problems. Someone who gives a damn." "But what if I fail?" Maya whispered. "What if I mess this up and waste all your money and let everyone down?" "Then you'll fail," James said simply. "And we'll learn from it and try again." "You think I didn't fail? My first company went bankrupt. My second barely broke even. I've made 1,000 mistakes. The only real failure is being too scared to try." Maya wiped her eyes. "Richard's going to keep questioning everything I do." "Probably," James agreed. "But I'm the chairman of this foundation, and I believe in you. So does the rest of the board, whether Richard wants to admit it or not. You've done more good in 5 months than most foundations do in 5 years." He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. "This came today. I thought you should see it." Maya opened it. Inside was a letter written in shaky handwriting. It was from a woman named Gloria, whose daughter had received one of their nursing scholarships. The daughter was the first person in their family to go to college. The letter went on for 3 pages about what this meant, how it had changed their entire family's future. "We get letters like this every week now," James said softly. "Because of you. Because you understand what people need. Because you lived it." Maya read the letter twice, feeling the tightness in her chest start to ease. "I'm still scared," she admitted. "Good," James said. "Scared means you care. Scared means you understand the weight of what we're doing. I'd be worried if you weren't scared." They stood there in silence for a while, watching the city below. Maya thought about Gloria's daughter, about all the other people the foundation was helping, about her mother smiling again and Carlos thriving at school. Maybe she was qualified. Not because of a degree or years of experience, but because she understood what it meant to struggle. She knew what it felt like to choose between medication and rent, between eating and paying bills. She knew what hope looked like when someone offered you a lifeline. "Okay," Maya said finally. "Let's go back to that meeting. I have a proposal to finish presenting." James smiled. "That's my girl." They walked back to the conference room together. Richard looked surprised to see them, probably expecting Maya to quit. Instead, she took her place at the head of the table and pulled up her presentation. "As I was saying," she continued, her voice steady now, "these 3 clinics will serve approximately 15,000 people who currently have no access to regular health care. The return on investment isn't just financial. It's lives saved. It's children who don't miss school because they're sick. It's parents who can keep working because they can afford their medication." She looked directly at Richard. "You're right that I was a floor nurse 6 months ago. And I'm glad I was. Because I've held the hand of a man who died because he couldn't afford his insulin. I've watched mothers cry because they had to choose which child to bring to the emergency room. I've seen what happens when people fall through the cracks. This foundation exists to catch them, and I'll fight for every single person who needs us." The room was quiet for a moment. Then another board member started clapping. Then another. Even Richard gave a small nod of acknowledgement. They approved her proposal unanimously. Later that night, Maya sat in her apartment looking at Gloria's letter. She thought about the Maya from 6 months ago, exhausted and drowning in debt, saving a stranger's life because it was the right thing to do. She'd been so afraid of changing, of becoming someone different. But maybe change wasn't about becoming someone new. Maybe it was about becoming more of who you already were. Her phone buzzed, a text from James. "Proud of you today. You're going to change so many lives." Maya smiled and typed back. "Already have. Starting with my own." 2 years after that Tuesday morning in Grant Park, Maya stood on a small stage in her old neighborhood. The sun was warm on her face, and in front of her sat about 200 people in folding chairs. Behind her was a brand new building with freshly painted walls and a sign that read, "Second Chance Community Health Center." This was the 10th clinic the foundation had opened. The 10th. Maya still couldn't believe it sometimes. Her mother sat in the front row looking healthier than she had in years. The cancer was still in remission and she'd gained back the weight she'd lost during treatment. She was smiling so wide her whole face glowed. Next to her sat Carlos, who'd graduate from college in 2 months with honors. He'd already been accepted to 3 medical schools. James sat on the other side of her mother looking relaxed in a way he hadn't that first time Maya met him. He was 71 now, still sharp as ever, still showing up to the office 3 days a week even though he didn't have to. The heart attack had changed him, made him slower, more thoughtful, but also happier somehow. Maya stepped up to the microphone. Public speaking still made her nervous, but she'd gotten better at it. She'd had to. 2 years ago, I was working as a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital, she began. I was exhausted, broke, and honestly felt like I was drowning most days. I loved my job, but I couldn't see a way forward. Couldn't see how I'd ever stop struggling. She paused, looking out at the crowd. She recognized so many faces. People from the neighborhood she'd grown up in. Former patients. Community members who'd helped plan this clinic. Then one morning, I saw someone who needed help, and I stopped. I didn't think about it. I just did what felt right, what I'd been trained to do, and that one moment changed everything. Maya gestured to James. This man could have just sent me a check and moved on with his life, but instead he saw something in me I didn't see in myself. He gave me a chance to do something bigger than I ever imagined possible. Her voice got stronger. The Second Chance Foundation has given out over 300 scholarships in the last 2 years. We've opened 10 free clinics serving more than 50,000 people. We've trained 200 community health workers. We've provided over $5 million in medical care to people who couldn't afford it. The crowd started clapping, but Maya held up her hand. She wasn't done. But here's what matters most. Every single person we've helped has a story. Like Gloria's daughter, who's now in her 2nd year of nursing school. Like Mr. Chen, who finally got his diabetes under control because he can afford his medication now. Like little Destiny, who doesn't have asthma attacks anymore because her family can see a doctor regularly. Maya felt her throat get tight. This clinic we're opening today? It's in the neighborhood where I grew up, where my mother still lives, where I learned what it meant to struggle. And now it's where people can come when they're sick or scared or don't know where else to turn. She looked at her mother. My mom taught me that helping people isn't about getting something in return. It's about doing what's right, because it's right. And I think that's what this foundation is really about. Giving people a second chance, not because they earned it or deserve it, but because everyone deserves access to health care. Everyone deserves to be seen and heard and helped. The applause was louder this time. Maya saw people wiping their eyes. Her own eyes were wet too. After the ribbon-cutting ceremony, people lined up to tour the new clinic. Maya walked through with them, pointing out the exam rooms, the pharmacy where people could get medications at no cost, the community room where they'd hold health education classes. An older woman grabbed Maya's hand as she passed. Thank you, the woman said simply. My grandbaby has been sick and we couldn't afford the doctor. Now we can bring her here. Maya squeezed her hand back. That's exactly why we built this. Later, after most people had left, Maya found James sitting on a bench outside the clinic. He was looking at the building with an expression she couldn't quite read. You okay? She asked, sitting down beside him. Just thinking, he said, about legacy, about what we leave behind when we're gone. Maya felt a chill despite the warm day. James had been healthy lately, but he was getting older. The heart attack was a reminder that time wasn't unlimited. I've been meaning to tell you something, James continued. I met with my lawyers last week. Updated my will. Maya's stomach dropped. She didn't want to talk about this. Didn't want to think about a world without James in it. The bulk of my estate is going to the foundation, he said. Enough to keep it running for decades. To open 100 more clinics if that's what's needed. James, let me finish, he said gently. My children are taken care of. They'll get enough to live comfortably. But the real money, the money that matters, goes to continuing this work. And you're in charge of it all. Full control. Maya couldn't speak. The weight of what he was saying was too enormous. I trust you, James said simply. More than I've trusted anyone in a long time. You've proven over and over that you understand what matters, that you won't lose sight of why we started this. I don't know what to say, Maya whispered. Say you'll keep fighting for people like that grandmother who thanked you today. Say you'll keep opening clinics and funding scholarships and training health workers. Say you'll keep being exactly who you are. Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then James spoke again. You know what's funny? My kids have started coming around more. They volunteer at the clinic sometimes. I think seeing what we're doing, seeing how you've built this, it's changed something in them. Made them understand what I was trying to teach them their whole lives. What's that? Maya asked. That money is just a tool. What matters is what you build with it. Who you help with it. The lives you change. He smiled. You taught me that too, you know. Or reminded me anyway. I'd forgotten somewhere along the way. Maya leaned her head on his shoulder. Thank you, she said. For everything. For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Thank you for stopping that morning in the park. For not walking past like everyone else did. That evening, Maya drove home through her old neighborhood. She passed the building where she'd grown up. The corner store where she used to buy candy as a kid. The park where she'd played. Everything looked the same but different somehow. Like seeing it through new eyes. She thought about the girl she'd been 2 years ago. Exhausted, struggling, unable to see past the next month's bills. That girl wouldn't recognize her life now, but she'd recognize the core of who Maya still was. Because despite the nice apartment and the professional clothes and the fancy job title, Maya was still the person who stopped to help. Still the person who saw people instead of problems. Still the person who believed everyone deserved a second chance. Her phone buzzed with a notification. An email from their communications director. The story of the new clinic opening had been picked up by a major news network. They wanted to do a feature on the foundation, on Maya's journey from floor nurse to foundation director. Maya smiled and set the phone down. Let them tell the story if they wanted. But she knew the real story wasn't about her or James or even the foundation. It was about every person they'd helped. Every scholarship recipient, every patient at their clinics, every family that didn't have to choose between food and medicine anymore. When she got home, Maya pulled out the envelope James had given her that first night. The one with the $50,000 check she'd been so scared to cash. She'd framed the note that came with it, the shaky handwriting thanking her for saving his life. She read it again, like she did sometimes when she needed to remember why she was doing this work, why she'd taken the leap into this new life despite being terrified. You saved my life without hesitation, without knowing who I was, without expecting anything in return. Maya had saved James's life that Tuesday morning, but the truth was he'd saved hers too. Not just financially, though, that was part of it. He'd saved her from a life where she was slowly burning out, where she was so focused on surviving that she'd forgotten how to dream. He'd shown her that one moment of compassion could change everything. That helping one person could lead to helping thousands. That who you were mattered more than where you came from or what degrees you had. Maya's phone rang. It was Carlos, excited about an interview he'd just finished for medical school. She listened to him talk about his dreams of becoming a pediatrician, maybe even working at one of the foundation's clinics someday. After they hung up, Maya walked to her window and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, someone was struggling the way she had struggled, worried about bills, exhausted from working multiple jobs, wondering if things would ever get better, and tomorrow maybe one of them would walk into one of their clinics. Maybe they'd get the help they needed. Maybe it would be the beginning of their own second chance. Maya had learned something important over these 2 years. Life wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic moments, though those had their place. It was about showing up every day, about choosing to help even when it was hard, about stopping when you could have kept walking. She'd stopped to help a stranger and it had changed her entire world. But she'd been helping people her whole life. Every shift as a nurse. Every time she chose compassion over convenience. Every moment she'd put someone else's needs ahead of her own exhaustion. That was who she'd always been. The foundation just gave her a bigger platform to be that person. Maya smiled at her reflection in the window. She looked different than she had 2 years ago. More confident, less tired. But her eyes were the same. Still kind. Still determined. Still looking for people who needed help. Tomorrow she'd go to the office and keep building. Keep fighting for people who needed someone to fight for them. Keep honoring the second chance she'd been given by giving second chances to others. But tonight she'd just be grateful. Grateful for that Tuesday morning. Grateful for James's friendship and faith in her. Grateful for her mother's health and her brother's success. Grateful for every person who'd believed in her when she didn't believe in herself. One moment had changed her life forever. And she planned to spend the rest of her life making sure that moment mattered.